Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Boertje and I'll be your organizer for the session. And with me today is Boertje. I have a short video I'd like to play just before we hand over to our presenter.
With the current state of electricity supply in our country, combined with the rising prices consumers face, you can be part of the solution by helping your clients switch to solar. Complete the articulated SANS 10106 Domestic Solar Water Heating Systems course to become an accredited installer. In celebration of Heritage Month, Articulated offers a 10% discount, making now the best time for you to make the switch.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to hand over to our presenter now.
Once again, good morning, ladies and gents. This morning's session is part 2 of a talk I did last Thursday on securities for performance. And I'm just going to quickly recap the session from last week. Perhaps there are some attendees today who did not attend last week. So what is a security? It is a financial instrument that provides the other party with a form of protection if the party providing the security defaults. Okay, so most contracts have security from both parties. So your client would give you a payment guarantee, and you would give your client a performance guarantee, or they would hold retention on you. In reality, you never get a payment guarantee in my experience. But you always have to provide some sort of security. So the risk is unbalanced, okay? In our industry, there are 2 very common forms of security, and that is cash retention or a construction guarantee, okay? In the JBCC and MBSA contracts, which are the most common in operation in this country, it is a fact that retention is not the default security, it's actually a guarantee. And if you don't provide a guarantee, you can actually have your contract terminated. In reality, everybody wants to hold on to your cash. So I've never seen a contract cancelled for a subcontractor or a contractor not providing a guarantee. So no risk there. Okay, then there are, of course, 2 forms of guarantee, which I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail today on. And that is a guarantee that reduces in value as the work progresses, and another guarantee, excuse me, which is what we call fixed, which expires at practical completion, and it's combined with a 5% cash retention. Okay. How does cash retention work? Most people think that 10% of each payment is withheld as retention. It's actually not like that in the document. The documents say that your client or contractor does not have to pay you at all until you have achieved 10% of the value of the works. Okay. That principle is also not very common. So I do see that normally retention is deducted incrementally on each payment. Otherwise, you'll have no cash flow until you've done 10% of the works. Okay. In all of the documents, retention reduces to 2.5% at practical completion, and then 0% on the final payment certificate. And just bear in mind, it can take a long time to get the final payment certificate, which is only issued after final completion of the works. Okay. So I'll get to the pros and cons at the end of this. The maximum amount of retention. So I see a lot of contractors or clients, they take 10% of every payment, and they just keep taking 10% until they get to, well, they never stop. Okay. How it actually works is the maximum amount of retention is 10% of your award value, which is also called your contract sum. Okay. So if you're appointed on a contract and your scope of work increases, they can't take retention on the increased portion. Okay, just bear that in mind going forward. Retention never attracts interest. Remember that too. Okay, then we spoke quickly about who provides guarantees. And of course, there's banks, and there are specialist insurance companies. Okay. The banks, I would call it the most onerous way to get a guarantee, because banks don't take risk. So they essentially want, if you ask a bank for a 50,000 Rand guarantee, they will want you to deposit 50,000 Rand cash in order for them to issue that paper. And they will charge you a fee to raise it. And you'll only get your cash back when the guarantee is returned. In other words, you are actually on full risk. You might as well let them take your retention. Okay. Insurance company, fairly different. Okay. So there, in my experience, you have to contribute 20 or 30% as collateral, and the insurance company will hold that money. Okay. You will also pay a fee, and you may have to give them some type of security, like a personal surety or a cession of book debts or something like that. But certainly a lot less cumbersome to get an insurance guarantee, because you don't have to provide all the collateral Rand for Rand. Just also bear in mind that it's actually not an insurance product, even though it's issued by an insurance company. And what that means is that if someone calls your guarantee, the insurance company will be looking to you to refund them, okay, for every Rand that they pay out. So they'll take all your collateral and then they'll chase you for the rest. And the lesson to be learned there is never, ever let yourself get into a position where someone can call your guarantee. I then spoke about the contracting parties. And what I meant by that was that when a guarantor issues a guarantee on your behalf to an employer, a contract is formed between the employer and the guarantor, okay? Notwithstanding that you've got collateral in the background in securities. So you can't interfere in that contract. So if it's a valid call, you can't interrupt the call, okay? Because you're not a party to that guarantee contract. Okay, just bear that in mind. Like I said, well, it's in the common law. The intention of all securities is to place the innocent party back in the position they would have been in had the default not occurred. Okay, and as I said, if there's not, or at least if there's not enough money in your guarantee, they will still come after you for the balance. So let's say something goes catastrophically wrong in a job, you're in major default, they cash your guarantee for 50 grand, and your client says, well, actually, I've lost 100 grand due to your default, they will come after you for the other 50 if they choose to pursue it. Okay. And the lesson to be learned there is never get yourself in a position where you're in default. Okay. Right. So now we'll move on to the topics for this morning. So how do guarantees expire? Okay. So guarantees have an expiry date. Okay. Now, historically, guarantees expire on the issue of the final payment statement, the same milestone that triggers the release of your retention if you're on cash retention. Now, with the events that have occurred in the construction industry over the last 10 years or so, the guarantors have said, look, we can't be having a guarantee that doesn't have an expiry date. We can't have what's called a contingent liability sitting on our balance sheet, just in case this guarantee gets called at some point. So nowadays you'll find that the insurance companies have, well, I wouldn't want to say they have colluded, but in my experience, you cannot get a guarantee without an expiry date, which is a very good thing. Okay? It might be 6 months after practical completion, and you may have to extend it if a project is delayed, but at least it has an expiry date. All right. Just also remember that regardless of any text in the guarantee, the guarantor normally requires the original to be returned. So when you issue a guarantee, if you do, please make sure that you know who got it. Okay. So if you give it to your client, inform him that he needs to keep very good care of it, and keep it in a place, in a safe, or in a filing zone that you can retract it later. I've had the experience where people lose guarantees, and then you've got to get a letter from that person, and the guarantee companies just don't like it because of the strength of that paper. Okay, it's a strong financial instrument, a guarantee. Of course, if you find yourself in a position where someone has made a claim against your guarantee, there are three circumstances that they can rely on in order to pull your guarantee. Okay, the first one is a negative certificate. Now, remember that generally you are paid in installments on a fortnightly or a monthly basis, more commonly, as the works are progressing. It sometimes happens that a party might overclaim, all right, for their scope of work. And if the quantity surveyor or the client is not alert, they may have missed those overclaims, and they might find themselves in a position where they've actually paid you more than they ought to have. Okay? And in the JBCC and MBSA contracts, the way to deal with that is to issue a certificate, a payment certificate that certifies money in favor of the employer, okay, or your client. So a interim payment certificate can certify money both ways, either to the contractor or to the employer. If you find yourself in a situation like that, and you've got a certificate which has an amount that's in favor of the employer, you generally have 21 days to pay that. And if you don't pay it, you open the door for them to call on your guarantee, okay, to recover that money. So the lesson there is, don't let yourself get into that position. Okay? If you do find that you've managed to overclaim, or perhaps that's just an error, and then make sure you keep those funds available in case you have to pay them back. Okay, but a well-run contract with a properly measured bill, etc., should never find yourself in that position. Okay, there are some instances where those certificates are prepared fraudulently, for want of a better word, and they ought not to look like that, but that is beyond the content of this morning's training. The second circumstance on which someone can call your guarantee is cancellation of contract for default. Okay, so if you have not performed on a contract, you would have to be put on terms first. Okay, so you would have to be called on to rectify the default or the breach. Perhaps you way behind program, perhaps you've installed the wrong product, your quality is not good enough, etc. Okay, so first you'll be called upon to rectify that. And if you don't rectify it, and you find yourself in a position where you open the door for a lawful termination of your contract for default, okay, then you open the door as well for the guarantee to be pulled, to put the other party in the position it would have been in had you performed properly. Okay, and that can be a subjective exercise, ladies and gents, and you don't want to ever find yourself in that position, because people can dream up all sorts of damages, alleged damages that you have caused, and make a call on the guarantee. And you can't defend that call. Okay? You can maybe defend it later, expensive court processes, but as long as the process has been followed properly by your client, the guarantee company will pay, and then they'll come after you. And the third circumstance is liquidation. Okay, so if you go into liquidation, you also open the door for that guarantee to be pulled. Now, they haven't updated the guarantees over the last few years. There's standard wording in the JBCC, etc. So the aspect of business rescue has not come into the fore yet, even though I have seen some clients who like to introduce that as an amendment. Okay, so if you declare business rescue proceedings, they can also cash it. And I'm not sure if that's lawful or not. I haven't done enough research on that, but I suspect it may not be, because the whole intention of business rescue is to save a company. And if everyone calls a guarantee the minute you go into business rescue, you have no chance of being saved. Okay. Okay, so a little bit more on the types of guarantee. So a variable guarantee is one that steps down as the contract progresses. So you will recall I said that it starts at 10% of the subcontract or contract sum. That's your order value, it never changes. Okay. When you progress through the work and you get to 50%, more than 50% of your work has been achieved, the guarantee steps down to 6%. Okay. The only way to prove that you've achieved more than 50% progress is by your payment advice or your payment certificate. Okay. When you reach practical completion, a practical completion certificate gets issued. Remember, it's practical completion of the entire works, not just your scope. Okay, it'll go down to 4%. A minimum of 3 months later, it'll go down to 2% on final completion if all defects and snags are disposed of in that time and your employer is completely happy that the job is entirely finished. And then basically on the signing of the final account and issuing of the final payment certificate to the contractor. Okay, so if you're a subcontractor, you have to wait, and then your guarantee will expire. Okay, and then of course you need to get that original back. So this structure has been in place for about 15 years. There are, like I said, there are some risks if final payment or final completion can't be reached, which is why we introduced the expiry date. Okay, a fixed guarantee, it works in conjunction with cash retention. So it's initially equal to 5%. Okay, and it expires on practical completion. So it doesn't step down at all. It just expires on practical completion. So the minute that certificate is issued, your guarantee is expunged. But you also have to give up 5% retention. Okay, and that 5% retention will stay on also until final completion. Okay, so sometimes it's a good thing to have because it means you've got a smaller guarantee, so you've got you're less at risk in terms of what you have to provide, and also your client's only holding 5% and not 10%. Now, just in my experience, a lot of contractors and subcontractors don't make 10%, especially on the bigger stuff. So if you allow someone to take your retention, it often happens that you only realize a profit right at the end of the job. Okay, which is not really the reason to be in business, is it? Okay, and then to wrap up this morning's talk, I'm just going to give you the pros and cons. Okay, so cash retention, it's money out of your cash flow. Okay, you've got a risk of delays due to disputes and issues on site. So now, especially in today's environment, all right, some projects are extensively delayed. Okay, which means that somebody is holding your retention for a long time, which is a position you don't want to find yourself in. In today's environment, you certainly have the risk of business rescue or liquidation. And unfortunately, this is a proper reality in the South African construction environment. And I do a lot of work with the Master Builders Association, and I don't want to tell you how many contractors and subcontractors go out of business on a monthly basis. It's quite frightening. Okay, if you are working for somebody or a company, at least, and they go into business rescue, and they are holding your cash retention, you become a concurrent creditor like everybody else that company owes money to. Okay? There are zero, if not extremely small percentage of companies that actually make it out of business rescue and start trading again. And what will more than likely happen, just like in a liquidation, you will end up getting a few cents on the rand for the amount of retention that they're holding. Okay, so bear that in mind. If somebody is holding cash retention on you, it's my advice to do a little bit of the due diligence on them. Difficult to do, but there are certain things you can do. Just like, who is this person I am working for? Are they financially stable? Am I actually going to be able to get my retention back? Okay. Of course, you don't have to provide a collateral up front with cash retention. So you've got no securities to provide. So that helps you. Okay. Maybe you don't have cash for collateral. There are some institutions that safe keep retention. Okay. One of them is FEM, the guys that do workmen's compensation, Federated Employers Mutual. They actually have a retention fund. Okay. So if you can agree with your client that the retention that gets deducted sits with FEM, okay, it is safer if that is the case. Okay. It's not foolproof, because if the company goes into business rescue or liquidation, that money will go straight back into the company. You will not become a creditor, a preferential creditor. You will remain a creditor like everybody else. Okay. In terms of a guarantee, of course, you have to provide your bank with 100% of the value, or your insurance company 20 or 30%. You would have to sign some security to show that you are confident in your business. You might have to have a nice balance sheet. Okay. You can get guarantees for smaller companies. Okay. You can't get guarantees for very small works, but you can. Okay. And if anyone's got an interest in finding out more about guarantees, you're welcome to contact me. You can contact me through my website, or you can get my details. Okay, so at least with a guarantee, you will earn interest on your collateral. If someone takes your retention, you never get paid interest on it. Okay. If you give a bank or insurance company collateral as a form of cash, you will at least earn some interest on it. So that helps. Okay. And of course, the expiry date will help. And to me, the most important thing is that you're not exposed to business rescue or liquidation. Okay. So your guarantee is basically safe if a company goes into BR or liquidation. I'd even go so far as saying it's easier to get it back. Okay. Or for a bank to, or your guarantor to cancel it. Okay. So in summary, there are pros and cons for both, depending on your financial status, I suppose, your balance sheet, how much security you can offer, the size of your contract, and the type of client that you are dealing with. Okay, so Byron, I think that brings us straight to our time there.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning, and have a blessed week.
Thank you.